Hi, my name is Christina Berry, and I'm an agency development manager here at Google headquarters based in Mountain View. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Ben Childs,
Thank you.
CEO of Digital Reach. And Ben's joining us today to teach us a bit more about their training program.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the CEO of Digital Reach. We are a digital marketing company in San Francisco. We do SEO, PPC, especially AdWords, and web development. And I think training is really important because it's a pain point with clients because they always feel like they're getting rotated on someone younger. And so I want to be able to put someone on their account who actually knows what they're doing fast. And it's also a pain point for agencies themselves because you have someone who you just hired and you need to get them working on accounts as fast as possible, but avoid that problem of where they just go in and blow stuff up because they don't know what they're doing.
We don't want that.
Yeah.
So you've been mastering AdWords for quite some time now.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about the initial learning process for those of us who are just starting to learn about AdWords.
Yeah, so my initial learning process was kind of funny because I didn't actually do AdWords. So back in 2010, it was a different time. Clicks were 5 cents. It was crazy. I started working at a small agency, and what we did is I did business development, and so we'd screen share and look at accounts. And the only thing I knew about AdWords was all the guys around me and kind of what they told me to look for. So I had like a list of like 9 or 10 things. I'd be like, you're not rotating ads, you have bad search terms, look at all this broad match. And I could just play gotcha. And if I could find 4 or 5 things, people signed up. And they needed help. But it taught me really nothing about AdWords. I just kind of learned what to look for. And back in those days, I took the AdWords certification test, which was $50 a test back then, and I failed the first one, so it got expensive real fast. Stayed up all night, chugged a Mountain Dew, studied, and then I passed the next one because I had to.
You finally did it.
Absolutely. And as much as I could, I tried to learn on blogs. So the world was very different back then. Content marketing really wasn't a thing. The only, I think, good PPC blogs that I read consistently were WordStream and PPC Hero from Hannah Marketing, and some other things in that, but there's nothing that really taught you how to do AdWords. It was just like, here's what quality score is. And then I learned more to tell clients to show them that I knew what quality score was. So you could say that when I began, like, I knew the recipe for chicken cordon bleu, but I'd never cooked. Or I could pass the driving certification, but I would crash because I've never driven. So it was a really weird way to learn AdWords. And it was good, but didn't help too much later.
Got it. Definitely quite an interesting path to learning AdWords and where you are today. I would love to hear a few stories from your initial experiences. Do you have any lessons learned from your first few clients, good or bad?
Some good ones, a lot of bad ones. So I started freelancing in 2011. And I basically just learned by feeling around in the dark. I called 866 to Google a lot. I Googled stuff a lot. But back in those days, if you had a problem and you were reading the Google training manual, like if you search for something on Google, the first thing that showed up was the Google training manual because there just wasn't a lot of info out there. So what I learned and what I got better at over time is I didn't prioritize. So I looked at AdWords. I saw it's basically a bunch of Excel sheets, and it all looked important to me. And so I didn't say, I need to focus on conversions, I need to focus on quality score, I need to focus on testing. So if things weren't going good in like Wisconsin or at 2 p.m., I was freaking out trying to change that. Meanwhile, the entire account's going down, and I don't know why. The other thing that I didn't have, and this really changed my business and changed my training program, is I didn't have a process. And I think the best way to work on any AdWords account, and maybe anything, is having a good process. So what I did is I had like Trello, it actually was Trello. I had like a Kanban board where I had clients that I needed to work on that week right here. I had clients that I was working on that day right here, and clients that were done and I'd sent their report right here. And so after that week, I would move them all over, and I would just say, I wonder what I'm going to do this week, because I had no idea. I had written all my notes on pen and paper, which looking back was really silly. People actually use pen and paper. And I would just start fresh and be like, what do I think is on fire? And it's a very reactive place to be and not a good way to run an AdWords account. The other thing, and this is related to that, is I never stepped back and looked at the forest for the trees. Should this person be on AdWords? Are things going well for their business? How is this helping them? What are their KPIs? You know, I've done 1,000 bid changes this week. Does that even matter? And I never even thought about that. I was just in and doing it. So I learned a lot of those things the hard way, that you have to have a process that is repeatable. You can train people on it. You have to prioritize, and you actually have to look at things as a whole, as opposed to just applying what you learned on a blog.
Yeah, definitely. So if we were to flash forward to 2016, what would that process look like?
Yeah, so I talked about the disconnect in theory and application, and I think theory is great. You need to have it, but you can get it even faster now. So just starting with that, there's so much content out there. I mean, content marketing really took off back in 2010, 2011, to where now there's just so much content about everything. There's video walkthroughs, there's blogs with screenshots, and so you can just walk through and get the exact way of how to do something, as opposed to knowing what it is. And there's a lot about AdWords, because content marketing about the digital marketing industry, there's a lot out there. Probably more than there should be. The other thing that I want done is I want, when someone's learning, to think about it as an application. So not just, I know this word, this is good lingo to have, although that's important, because if you use the wrong lingo with a client, you're just going to get fired. Don't want them to think that they know more than you, which is really bad. I want them to say, okay, I can restructure an account. You know, that's, in reality, a lot of people can do that. Set up some good campaign structure, set up some good ad groups, make them thematic, write some good ads. All right, good to go. I want to look at something like bid management. I want to look at something like quality score improvement, and I only want to think about those on an ongoing way. So how do I do this month over month? How do I adjust bids, lower, and then if it doesn't get better, what do I do? So taking it one step further, you're able to get the context of why it's important, and you won't run into those issues because you actually know what to do when the rubber hits the road, which I didn't. And then the other thing that I want people to do when they're learning is to always take a step back. So does what I'm doing support my goals or the client's goals? It could be that they shouldn't be running AdWords at all. It could be that you're doing some great ad rotations, some great bid adjustments in a campaign that just shouldn't be there. So you have to ask yourself, do I have a bias towards having all of these turned on at the same time? And no bid adjustments in the world is going to overcome that one of these campaigns should just go. But people don't step back and look at it in terms of the goals and see the forest for the trees. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. So I'm thinking about a lot of people who are trying to master AdWords and currently walking through many trainings, learning the theory and trying to understand how to operate an account. And you mentioned the application is critical many times. So I'm curious to know, how does someone go from learning in theory and training to actually being able to say they're proficient in AdWords? What actions they need to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing is to get a dummy account. And so if you're learning by yourself, it's really easy to sign up. You don't have to spend any money. You can put it on pause. And everything that you learn about, you should probably be doing it in your dummy account. So if you learn how to write an ad, you go in and you actually write an ad. It's very different to know how to write an ad and then actually go in there and try and fit in 35 characters yourself. It's very different. And if you work at an agency, hopefully they let you touch somebody's account. At our agency, we have people that are working in editor and doing changes that we don't push live. We take a look at it and we say, okay, here's what needs to happen, here's what needs to change. If this actually got pushed live, you would have ruined this account. How can we learn from that? And then we actually give it to the regular person to do. So I don't want people sitting there watching videos or reading a blog. I want them actually applying it from day one. Well, maybe not day one, but that's kind of dangerous. But I want them actually in an account as fast as possible. And that's easy to do at an agency. They usually have a lot of accounts because that's just the only way you're going to learn. The other thing I want people to do is really dive in to the content. So like I said, content may have held me back getting started because there wasn't a lot out there. Now, if you have a dummy account and someone's you're learning on your own, you can find great videos, you can find great walkthroughs, so then you can do it in your dummy account and learn. The other thing that you need to do is, if you're learning, is everything you're doing. Now, if you work at an agency, they probably have a process. We do. If you're a freelancer, you may have to create your own. But everything you're doing, put it in a repeatable process. So you think about it, I don't just do bid adjustments. I do them once a week, or I do them once every 2 weeks. You can find a lot of things online that talk about how often people do different things. It's all different, depending on the goals of the account. But everything you do, you want to put it into a process that then you can repeat. And that just makes your life so easier. You do the minimum viable amount of work to make sure the account doesn't light on fire, so then you actually have time to do strategic work. So I think that's what turned around my training program, is creating a process that then you can teach other people, and then actually getting people into accounts as fast as possible, as safe as possible, so they don't actually do anything, but they're learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, really insightful. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today in the Google studio. And thank you so much for tuning in.